Okay, so under the van at the moment, having a look at the damage caused by the tyres on the F-truck, throwing up debris and whatnot, rocks, from the unsealed roads we drive on. Now these get flung back at considerable force under the Caravan, and it'll actually cause quite an amount of damage. So it's not a new idea, and certainly not something I've come up with, but what you do to protect your undercarriage is put various guards and whatnot around the place. So something a lot of people would be familiar with. If we flip this around, so underneath the water tank, in this particular case our front water tank, you can see how it's got that checker plate protecting the plastic tank. The checker plate there is basically to take the hits and, like I said, look after the plastic tank. Now if we pan around and have a look at the suspension, you can see how much of that yellow paint's been blasted off the front of the suspension. Now that causes considerable damage, not just to the paint, but you will notice there that those grease nipples, whilst they're covered in grease to protect them, they've had to be replaced. On this trip, even with the small amount of off-road work that we've done, or off-sealed road work that we've done. So what we're going to do is put a number of effectively mud flaps underneath the van to protect it. And what that does is it just knocks down the rocks and stones, debris thrown up by the tow vehicle, in this case the F-truck, and stops so much damage to the underside of the van. You may not be able to see it from here, but that grey water tank, which hangs lower than the rest, so you can see here they're all fairly well up in the chassis, the water tanks. So we have this one here and the next one are both effectively house water or just fresh water to the van. The next one back is the drinking water tank, and then the very rear one is the grey water tank. You can see it hangs down lower than the other three, and that is sufficient for it to get a real toweling. I might go back and have a bit more of a look at that for you, so let's just cut this for a sec. Righto, so this is a close-up of the grey water tank underneath, and you can see there it's not particularly clear, but you can see how much bend and damage that's sustained, and that's from rocks being thrown back all the way from the vehicle all the way back here. There'd be a minor amount of it coming off the actual fan tyres, but not much. Most of it would be coming from the truck and bouncing back along up into that tank. You can see how much damage it's done. So just in here we have all the plumbing. There's the grey water outlet tap. It goes into that grey tank, but this guard here, nice and soft, is designed just to take the hits and just deflect the rocks and stuff down so that it doesn't damage that plastic plumbing. Now it has indeed smashed that at one point of the game, but we've replaced all the damaged bits, and then we've put that guard over it to protect it. Righto, so there's two of the batteries under the side. You've got the checker plate cover on it. Now the actual battery box itself is welded to the chassis. I don't know if you can see it particularly well, but it's actually bent the front of the battery box in from the amount of rocks hitting it, and you can see here the bottom of the actual guard has been bent in from rocks being thrown from the front. So to protect that, we have that rubber flap there, and that just takes those hits. You can see there it's obviously been folding back about that far, which still allows those rocks to hit this bottom section, but it's certainly going to protect the majority of the time. It'll protect the batteries. So we have bottom fill set up on our van. So there's the inlet to the bottom fill. This is another modification I did myself, but to protect that, not only do we run the a blanked off quick connect, but we also have that rubber flap there. Again, it's all about taking the hits so that the plumbing is protected. So just behind the rear axle of the van, we've got another rubber guard here which protects the water inlet for the mains into the van, and then we have the second of our bottom fill setups. The front one does one of the house water, and this one does one house water tank and then the drinking water tank. But you can see there just needing that bit of extra protection, and it's just enough to deflect rocks etc. away from these delicate fittings. When we travel, we actually remove the male quick disconnect off the hose and fit a cap over it to further ensure that we don't damage anything with that. Righto. So under the front of the van, we've got two water taps on the gooseneck. There's one here and there's one on the other side. Again, the rubber flap there is just to deflect stones away and protect these plastic fittings here, which are very susceptible to rocks being chucked at them. We actually broke one of those, so we've replaced them both and fitted the rubber flaps on it. We have these flaps here, which are part of our stone guard arrangement, which does help a little, but they're fairly high, so they would only protect a small amount of the van. Righto, so what we've got here is your standard truck type mud flap. It's polymer, it's not rubber, it's more like a flexible plasticky type operation. And then we've got the reinforcing strip which goes over it and helps support the bolt holes. Now what's going to happen, we'll secure them under the van to the cross member, and they're going to hang down fairly low to help deflect any stones and debris down away from the underside of the van, from the in front of the suspension. Righto, so there's the first one in place. You can see there that it hangs fairly low, but as you're driving along it will tend to flip away, but it's enough to, as stones come back, they hit that and they deflect it down away from the suspension and any other delicate bits up under there. Now most of the plumbing and cables etc. are up nice and high, such as up in there, but anything that's down low is going to cop a toweling. Righto, we'll keep putting the rest of these on. Righto, so we've got to step down around underneath the chassis because I want the mud flap to be fairly wide. So we're just going to cut some out of here so that we can secure that just that little bit lower than what the chassis is. Yeah, so the chassis will sit down there and allow that to be a bit higher. Righto, let's see how we go there with some cutting.